Good evening, and welcome to the WCAT Candidates Debate. Tonight's second debate involves the Board of Selectmen for the upcoming April 24th town election. My name is Bill Carroll. I'm the town moderator, and they always force me to moderate these debates. Before the debate, lots were drawn to determine the order of the candidates. And the candidates this evening are Deborah Butler, Paul Donaco, Julie Galvin-Smith, and Brian Falvey. The press panel this evening is Mark Sardella from the Item, and we have Tom Stapleton pinch hitting for the Wakefield Observer. Their representative was unable, their reporter was unable to show up tonight, but they did submit the questions, and Tom will read them out to the candidates tonight. There are no opening statements in this evening's debate. Now I have to read strictly these rules that David Watts, our producer, David Watts Jr., wants me to adhere to. In turn, a question will be asked of a candidate by the press panel. That candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. Following that response, each remaining candidate will have the opportunity to present his or her own 1-minute response to the question. To allow for as many questions as possible in the time available, while maintaining the ability for all to have a chance to respond, candidates should please keep their answers short and to the point. In other words, you don't have to use the 2 minutes or the 1 minute. Questions have not been provided to the candidates in advance. Questions must be relevant to the important issues of the town. And questions or responses of a personal nature are not allowed. At the end of the debate, in each turn, candidates will present a 2-minute closing statement. The moderator will govern the conduct of the debate at all times. And we're going to start the debate tonight with Mark Sardella having a question for Deborah Butler.
The current Board of Selectmen has already weighed in on this, but what is your view of centralized voting versus neighborhood polling places?
There has been contention about it. For me personally, the first time I heard it, I thought it was economical. I thought, okay, this makes sense. It's streamlined. You're not waiting for different precincts to weigh in. From an officer detail point of view, it seemed efficient. And then that was my perspective in terms of an efficiency point of view. I hadn't thought about the human cost of it. I mean, I had thought about handicap parking spaces and how people could access the Galvin, and again, it still made sense. It's a brand new facility, so it seemed perfect on paper. And then I thought the intimacy of a local polling place, that people had a sense of connection and camaraderie in going to their local polling place, seeing people that they had been in their community with, and that it was far more important to them how they were voting than where they were voting. So I've heard both sides of it. Personally, if there isn't a fiscal benefit at the Galvin, I think it could stay where it is. If there's a safety issue that stairways or access aren't appropriate where they're currently voting. And the last piece of it, the other piece of it, is just the cost to the people that have to vacate the Galvin. Business, anyone that has their child in school on a voting day has to arrange childcare. And so I think that there's a cost there that wasn't really maybe considered.
Paul.
As far as the centralized voting is concerned, this has been a point of discussion now for a few years, but it was just based upon whether or not it was practical and where would it be located. Once the Galvin became online and became accessible to the town, after we had the centralized voting at Town Hall for one election, it ran so smoothly that they thought that it could do just as well as a central location. It may be brought back before the town officials to consider having it now done in one location, that being the Galvin. We've heard both sides of the story now after the decision was made on whether or not there would be accessibility for people to get to the polling place where they've had it so close to them in the past, and whether or not that would be detrimental to the voting happening. So I say that we can put it into play, and if it changes, has to be made, then we make the change in the future.
Julie.
Sure. Thank you for having us. I think there's a lot of pros to centralized voting. For example, I've talked with poll workers, and sometimes there's confusion as to what site you have to go to, what precinct you're in, particularly with new voters. So I think that that will significantly reduce some of that confusion. The Galvin has a backup generator, so we don't have to think about kind of maintaining 4 different sites. It's a public building. It's a showcase building in Galvin, and it is certainly on bus lines, walkable from the commuter rail, whereas right now only one of the 4 polling areas is. Having said that, I do see, I have followed the discussion of it. I think change is hard. I think it's going to take some communications to really make it work. And so I think we do that, but we do it on a trial basis and see how it works with the schools.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I think this is it's a more significant issue than just the convenience or proper location within the town or facility. It's about whether or not we're disenfranchising voters. Your right to vote is one of the most important democratic tools we have in our country. It's one of our most sacred rights. And we're asking people to go to a church to vote, to go to a Masonic lodge to vote, to go to a place that serves alcohol to vote. If so much as one voter is disenfranchised or put off from exercising their constitutional right by the place we ask them to go or force them to go in order to exercise it, we've got to change it. And so it's kind of long overdue, if you will, that we make the change. Now, the change that's been proposed, Galvin, I think it's brilliant. As Paul said, we did centralized voting once before here at the high school. In the field house, it worked wonderfully, so it's been done. And I think the Galvin, as everybody said, great location, the traffic will be handled, and the students will have a professional development day that day, so they will not be in school, and it will not cost them a day of school. Really important part of that. So, great move.
Tom, question for Paul Donaco.
Yes, Paul, are you for or against the proposal to change the name of this board from Board of Selectmen to Town Council?
The answer to that question is yes, because for those who have seen the meetings that transpired up to the final vote, the vote that I took the final vote in order to push it forward. So it was it was a contentious issue back and forth, but through debate and through reasoning, the issue came forward, and I think it's the right thing to do at this point in time. As far as having the selectman name on there, if there was an issue with that and they want to make it gender-free, then the town council is what we voted on, and that's what's going to be before the ballot on the 24th. So I'm in favor for it, and I'll continue to be in favor for it.
Julie?
Sure. First, I really think that words are important. It's how we frame what we think, and so I am for the change. I think that it's only really become a bigger deal because it had to pass town meeting, and it did overwhelmingly there. And now, just because it's a charter change, it has to go to the ballot. And so I think that for people who say we're making too big a deal out of it, yeah, I think we are. Let's just do it and move on.
Brian?
Yeah, I'm fully in support of the name change. I think, almost similar to my voting answer a moment ago, if it puts anybody off, if it's disruptive, if the name makes somebody feel left out in any way, gender issues are so important, at the forefront of our society right now. It's so important that we embrace them, and I've had people ask me, well, why does it matter just in our little town? But we all know that in order for large changes to occur, it's the little steps, and it's the little inherent biases or subliminal biases that are out there that we need to eliminate. And by taking this step, we do that, and we also just kind of make a statement in our community, which I think is more important, that we care about this stuff, that we're open, we're inclusive, and this stuff matters to us. So I think it's important that we change the name. I'm glad we voted for it, and I look forward to it passing at the ballot.
Deb?
I think that I might have a different opinion. I think that as a title that had been denied to me for, 300 some odd years, the opportunity to walk into a room and say to somebody, I am a member of the Board of Selectmen, is exciting. I think that there are women who trailblazed before me, who see me now and are astonished that a woman can run still. That when I went to the senior center and they saw me stand up and I said, I'm Deb Butler, I'm running for Board of Selectmen, they said, good for you, good for you. Do I think, yes, the name needs to change. There's no more actresses and actors. We don't have to Latinize everything and put a gender to it. Sure, we'll change the name, but for a moment in time right now, for me, it's very exciting to be running for Board of Selectmen.
Mark, question to Julie Galvin.
Other than official municipal notices required by law, are there any other ways that you would reach out to local residents to inform them, get their opinions, get them involved?
Absolutely. I think communications is a critical part of the Board of Selectmen. And I do communications for a living, so I've given this a lot of thought. Certainly we have the perfunctory notices that we have to do. There are so many other things happening in town. We have a centralized calendar that's not being effectively used. I think we need to centralize everything, have a very robust website, and then use social media to publicize things, newsletters, probably email newsletters. Communications is absolutely a multi-channel undertaking these days, and we need to do all of that. In addition, I would really always be open to speaking with people, maybe even having open hours to talk with people.
Brian.
Yeah, sure. Communications is a top priority in the town. In fact, we in this most recent budget, we nearly doubled our communications budget because of that recognition. So we're taking the right steps to improve upon it, and we do need to improve upon it as a town. There have been some issues like the power line issue that a lot of folks felt like, geez, I really didn't know about that, although it was publicized, but probably not as well as we could have. And so we learned from that. And I think that's a really important part. So we've nearly doubled our communications budget. We do leverage all forms of social media right now. If there's a parking ban for a storm, you can read a tweet from the police chief that says parking ban in Wakefield. So there are lots of media that we leverage. We need to do more, though. I also think we need to kind of focus our communications. We should have a place where if you're a business owner in town and you need to figure out what are the things that matter to a business owner. I don't want to hire a lawyer to figure it all out. We should have a nice place that's tailor-made. Hey, here's what it takes to do business in Wakefield, and make it easy for folks so that we can attract and retain the best businesses. That should be part of the communications plan, not just the media that you use, but what you put out and how you put it out and how you hand it to the right people.
Deb?
What more am I going to say? Yes, that, and there's nothing worse than when you have your first advertisement is this big, and then there's a three-page article afterwards telling you what happened. And, oh, you didn't see on page 3 that there was a notice. You can definitely communicate out, but you have to make sure that people are in position to receive the communication. So Julie referenced the website, and having that updated is going to make someone more apt to go to it. So people have gone there as their first choice, didn't see the information they were looking for, and now it just doesn't feel like an option. So you can put it out in all the channels, but you can't necessarily grab people's attention, so there might even be further channels. Maybe there's some, I'm not sure what the separation is with the schools, but communication generally goes through the schools as well. So there's, in addition to every great thing that's already been said, so really not much more I can say, but the schools as well, another communication channel.
Paul.
I think it's an excellent question. This actually came up several years ago when I was asking Mr. Mayo what he thought could be in addition to the town when we were doing his review, and social media came up. And after going to an MMA meeting and hearing about how other communities were using social media to their advantage, it was at that point that he did a complete revamp of the town website. He hired a temporary social media person. In our last budget, we made it from a temporary to a full-time position, which should start hopefully be filled soon. With that being said, that will be a revamp of the website should occur. I think it's a great opportunity for us to use social media in all aspects, to getting all notices out to the people. It's not just through the paper and the newspapers. One email notice on Facebook can reach thousands of people instantaneously. So I think it's a great method.
Thank you. Tom, your question to Brian.
Brian, why did you decide to run for this position?
Well, it's a great question. I think I'll answer it in, I guess I get 2 minutes, so I'll use it.
Everybody gets 2 minutes on this question.
Yeah, I'll start with why I originally ran, which, and then I can talk about why I'm running for re-election. So before I joined the Board of Selectmen in 2012, I was elected to it, I had been on the Zoning Board of Appeals for about 10 years, which I think is one of the most significant and powerful boards in the town, because they get to have approval authority and put their stamp and their imprint on so many of the largest, most significant developments in the town that really shape the community for the future. So it's a really important role and important board. And so I really relished being on it for 10 years. And that's why I joined that, is I wanted to take part in having a say in things. And what I found, though, was when you're on the zoning board, you're limited to the projects that are brought to you. So somebody files to do a development, they bring a project to you, and you can act on that. I wanted to join the Board of Selectmen because I have ideas that I would like to see implemented. I have things I want to create and deals to put together that you can't do if you're in a receive mode. I wanted to be able to go out and take some proactive action to help the town and implement my ideas. And so that's why I joined the Board of Selectmen. I ran for it way back then. Since then, we've done a ton in this town. We've made a ton of progress. We've managed our finances so well. I really want to continue with the progress that we've made, which is why I seek re-election now. I think the position we're in financially, we're actually finally ready to actually take some of those bigger steps and work on those bigger projects and those bigger developments. And I want to be along for the ride now that we've got it right. And that's why I'm really looking forward to running again for re-election, kind of follow through on the things that we've started and the great success that we've had.
Thank you. Deb.
I've been in town for 21 years, and I have been a volunteer. And I have come to this town, not too many personal comments, as Bill said, but I came from one position, and I've migrated and grown with the town. So I came single, and I treated the town as a single woman would, and I used the services that were available to me. And then I brought children into my town, and then I'm aging in this community. And through it, and through volunteering, both very publicly and some sort of private philanthropy, and also founding things, I'm meeting a really wide swatch of people. And one thing that, very colloquially, is they're not feeling maybe necessarily represented on a very tactical, on the ground level. So someone's saying, well, I know we have a Board of Selectmen. I'm not really sure what they do. They're accessible theoretically, and not to say that anyone has ever declined them, but that maybe they didn't feel the comfort level or feel that because of maybe communication channels or direct access, that they weren't heard. And so for me, I've never really been afraid to not take someone else's cause and say, listen, I'll walk with you that walk. I'll have that conversation for you. And whether it's being a Girl Scout leader or whether it's working through the food pantry or whatever innumerable things I could list, continuing to meet different people and different profiles of people lets you get out of that sort of let them eat cake mentality. That there are people on Water Street, and then there are people on Main Street, and there are people in Greenwood who all want to be represented, although they all come to you with a different set of needs. And I don't currently feel like anyone on the board is necessarily tactically on the ground with a lot of these different subsections of people. And that may be an unfair statement, but that is my perception. So I'm running for Board of Selectmen because I want to give someone that accessibility.
Paul.
Well, I am in the same boat pretty much as Mr. Falvey. I served on the planning board for 9 years because I felt that it was time that I put into the community instead of just sitting back and watching others do what they said instead of putting their, best foot forward. So we dealt with subdivision control. At that time, it was a big issue, and people wanted to see change and protections put in place. So we went forward. We developed a master plan that set forth a lot of current activities with mixed-use development and cluster development and many activities that we now see as a benefit today in the development going on throughout North Ave and Foundry Street. But that wasn't all that I see. I saw a vision for what the town could be, and it made me want to go one step further, and that was going to become a selectman. And by doing so, I can now put into play some of my ideas that I had as far as getting the community involved and working with the businesses. And that's how we developed the Townwide Events Committee back in 2010, which developed the Italian Festival, the St. Patrick's Day event, and the Holiday Stroll. That started off right as a small item and grew into a very large endeavor, which brought back a lot of growth into the downtown area and other areas of the town. We've done a lot of good as a collective body on the board, and that makes me feel good that I've done something well for the town. But it's not a singularity, it's a group that makes this whole picture work. So it's a board of 7, and the 7 make a decision, and I think we've come a long way, and we've done a great job.
Julie?
Thank you. I am running because I really think Wakefield is on a very good trajectory. I'm excited about the leadership roles it's taking on things like having a human rights commission, recent environmental on the plastic bag reduction bylaw. We have solid reserves, so we're really doing very well. But what I think I bring, and the reason I'm running, is I bring a fresh perspective and a different knowledge base than what is on the Board of Selectmen right now. I'm running because I'm a mom of 2 high school students who are very much products of the Wakefield public school system and the youth programs, and as teenagers, you know, I'm seeing them grow into young adults, and that's thanks to this community that we have, and it also gives me more time to do things like this. I'm running because I have a communications background, a business background. I actually moved to Wakefield because my company moved to Edgewater Business Park, and so I've always thought about the business aspects of this, and I think that I can bring communications and business skills to the board. And my career has been in renewable energy, and environment is my passion. And while I think we've done great things with the arts and many other things in town, I think that the environment is something that has just not been on our radar screen. And I think every decision we make needs to think about environmental costs and, more importantly, environmental opportunities. And I really think about this in terms of the national discourse just being so divisive, and I just think right now we at the local level have to be strong, and we have to be loud, and we have to be smart. And so that is really why I'm running, and taking all the volunteer experiences and the things I've done in town, from community dinners to helping to form Sustainable Wakefield to working in the school system and on Wakefield Academy, and just taking it to that next level.
Thank you. Mark, your question is for Devin.
Several highly visible multi-unit condo or apartment buildings have been going up in recent years. Do you think Wakefield is becoming overdeveloped?
I think we're kind of hitting maybe what would be the beginnings of a tipping point. I'm really interested in what's going on in Reading right now. I think the high-density buildings are of concern to me for a lot of reasons, just the strain on the infrastructure of the town. We talk a lot about having these great reserves, but we do have, you know, when you start bringing these large populations in, they're coming in at a single time. So it's not like one home sale is moving over. So it's an influx of students into the schools, and I know they can do some actuary numbers and suggest that it's not going to be a problem at the Walton for Tarrant Lane. But I think we're seeing that happen in Reading right now with their resource officers, their police force, their firefighters, their infrastructure. They really got hit hard with their multi-use development, and I love that we're developing, but I am concerned when there's, you know, a 5th floor when we maybe could have bargained for 4 or just walked away from a project, because Wakefield is desirable, and some of these places will come back, I think. And I think I'm just a little bit interested in the zoning. You know, I'm a little bit interested in what we're doing development, and frankly, I am concerned without being an alarmist.
Paul?
I take a different perspective on the matter. I think that a while back, the town made a determination that they wanted to do mixed-use development, especially in the downtown area, where they wanted to have owner-occupied residents above the building and the businesses downstairs. With doing so, you had to set your height limits and your density, and I think we made the right decision back then. You can say that we will increase the services to the town, which could happen, but as far as the children is concerned, every report that comes back, the amount of children that come out of the reports is always lower than what everyone anticipates. So I really think that the tax derived from the development is a benefit to the town. I think that right now they're being strategically located, and I don't think they're really a detriment to the community.
Julie?
I too like the multi-use buildings. I think it was a very smart decision. I think they are adding to the vibrance of particularly our downtown area. And more importantly, I think that they give options for housing, which if you look at just the real estate papers today, there are 28 houses for sale in Wakefield at an average price of $519,000. So we need housing options so that young professionals can live here, families can live here, and seniors can live here. So I really like that. I think that focusing them on the downtown brings more buyers to businesses, and I think focusing them around our transit system and our commuter rail and buses really makes us an option for people who want to work in Boston and around the area. So I do like them.
Brian?
Yeah, sure. I think that the whether or not we're being overdeveloped really boils down to kind of two concepts. And the first is the amount of development that's going on, and the second is the type of development. So as far as the amount of development, we live in a Commonwealth that has Chapter 40B, which if 10% of our housing stock is not classified as affordable, then any developer can come into any property and basically ignore local zoning bylaws and build whatever project they'd like. And that's a pretty scary proposition. They have the power of the courts behind them. Not much we can do to stop it. And so, projects like Tarrant Lane, which I think are concerning to people, but that's a rental property, and I'm not sure people realize that 100% of those units will count towards our affordable housing stock. And with that, we actually get to 9.85%, the closest we've ever been to that 10% threshold where we can take back control of development in our town. I think we need 16 more units to get there. As far as the type of development goes, that's a great project. As Paul said, the statistics show that they don't yield a tremendous burden on the schools because renters tend to be a transient population, less likely to be families. And then the mixed-use development that we've been talking about is vital for downtown. We need people to shop downtown during the day, and when they go home, people come home from work that live downtown and shop in their neighborhood.
Thank you.
That's really helpful.
Okay. Tom, your question is to Paul Donaco.
Hey, Paul, one of the Board of Selectmen's biggest responsibility is the hiring of a town manager. Do you support the 5-year contract extension that Town Administrator Steve Mayo received? Why or why not?
I wholeheartedly support the contract that the Board of Selectmen voted on giving the town administrator for a 5-year period. And let me explain why, in my opinion. The town administrator's position is the chief financial officer of the community. And he has to oversee all aspects of all items that the town does as far as whether or not there's a budget. He has to worry about where the money's coming from. This year's budget is $91 million for the town of Wakefield. Finding out what departments can save money, working with the town accountant is key to having us be able to do all the things that we need to do to provide all services to the community. So in reasoning for giving him the 5-year deal, you have to look at the surrounding communities and how well they're doing and what their rates of pay are. And during that process, we found that our administrator, who has developed a lowest bond rating in the surrounding community, was making one of the less amounts out of all of them. And we didn't feel that that was fair or equitable for the town, let alone for the administrator. So I do wholeheartedly support the fact that we did give him a 5-year term, and it was based upon his value to the community.
Thank you. Julie?
Sure. I do support the 5-year contract. I have not worked directly with Steve, not currently on the Board of Selectmen, but throughout this process, and even just as a resident before this was even on my radar screen, I have found him to be very responsive, very knowledgeable about this town, always has the best interests of this town at heart. And I think a 5-year contract provides stability for the town. He has a proven track record. We're in good shape compared to surrounding communities, most certainly. And I think that having a contract guarantees that that will go forward. And as a member of the Board of Selectmen, we will collaborate and oversee his work. And so I feel confident that a strong board and a strong administrator will help this town.
Brian?
Yeah, I fully supported it as a member of the Board of Selectmen, and as Paul mentioned, we did a salary survey and found out that our town administrator is paid less than his peers in similarly situated towns. There were several job openings available in other towns or coming open, and quite frankly, Wakefield is the envy of other towns in the North Shore and in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that puts Mr. Mayo in high demand. In my business, the true testament of a manager or a boss is your ability to attract and retain top talent. We have top talent sitting in front of us. I think it would be a disservice to this town to do anything that would give him reason to go elsewhere. And so securing his services for the benefit of the people of Wakefield for the next 5 years is one of the best things we've ever done. We have a AAA bond rating. We have one of the best, most efficient budgets going. We return money to cash reserves at the end of every year. We have one of the best public safety departments in the entire Commonwealth, if not the country. Things are going well in Wakefield right now, and a lot of it has to do with the leadership of Mr. Mayo. And there's no reason that we need to keep him, and I'm glad we did.
Deb?
Sure. Speaking last doesn't give you much of an opportunity to say anything any more eloquent than the people before me. Steve's doing great. Steve got a contract. Good for Steve. Good for us. I couldn't venture to talk any more knowledgeably or less knowledgeably about it. I mean, you said it. He's here. He's got it. It's great.
Okay. We're going to switch up. Tom, you're going to give a question to Julie.
Okay, Julie. Some communities in the region are struggling with an opioid crisis. How do you view your role in confronting that problem?
It is tragic what is happening with the opioid crisis, and we are not the only community dealing with it. Melrose Wakefield Hospital is second in the state for the number of incidents and cases. I think Wakefield had 20 people overdose last year. I think there's no easy solution. We have wonderful programs like Wake Up. We have a wonderful police chief who is on this. It requires continuing to fund both prevention and treatment, making sure we have Narcan available, which is becoming increasingly expensive. And I think it's really education in the schools as well. I mean, I have been very disturbed with 2 high school children that there's upticks in things like vaping and marijuana use. And I'm not saying that it's a gateway to that, but I think it's all related, and I think we better deal with it as young as we can deal with it, be compassionate with the people who are dealing with it, and do this as a community, because this could happen to any one of our families.
Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. I think the opioid epidemic is actually getting worse, not better, especially with the introduction of fentanyl into the population and its prevalence. And apparently, in my latest meeting with the chief, I've heard that actually cocaine is making a resurgence in our communities. So I think one of the most important parts of this, there are 2 things, are basically police training, or better stated, public safety training, and outreach and communication. So on the police front, we do have one of the best trained police forces and fire departments, both of whom carry Narcan with them and have the ability to save a life. And they do it all the time in Wakefield, and sometimes it doesn't work too, and we have deaths in Wakefield. What's interesting, and I think it's out of respect for the families and the victims, we don't necessarily publicize this well enough. I think we think that opioid is something that happens in New Hampshire or on the Cape. It happens here, and we need to get the word out so that parents and leaders in the town are more alert and can help stop this and protect the people of Wakefield.
Thank you. Deb?
It's also a huge mental health crisis. I mean, something is driving people to use, and certainly education. I'm looking at the work. I mean, I saw Catherine Dingra did a great presentation on vaping recently, and it is shocking. But overall, the epidemic isn't just starting at the school age level. I think it's available, so people use it. Years ago, we had a lot of trouble with alcoholism because that was the only way you could dull it. And now there are just more substances that people have access to. So in addition to treating it as an addiction problem and an access problem, it's a mental health crisis. People are numbing themselves. And so having better recognition, better interventions with anxiety, with mental health crisis, access to counselors, with people who are underinsured, access for them is huge in combating why people choose to medicate.
Thanks. Paul?
I agree with my constituents here tonight. The opioid crisis is on an uptick, and it's very alarming that it is spreading to the level that it is. I know that we have to do our best to support our local police department in every way possible to combat this. The Board of Health is doing its part on this. The fire department does it as well too, because they are first responders at the same time or before the police department. Outreach has to be given, and more people have to be made aware of what is happening within the community. Instead of being, protected, they should be fully known what's going on. And then maybe at that point, that will be how things are made more aware. So people would see it, they may say something, and then we can at least curb it to a degree if we can.
You were the first one, right?
I was
Yeah.
the first.
Okay. So, Mark, your question is to Brian. Double checking here.
At some point in the next 3 years, Chief Smith is going to retire. What qualities would you like to see in the next head of the police department?
Yeah, I mean, you can't start talking about Chief Smith's replacement until you talk about Chief Smith. He has done such a wonderful job being a leader, a visible leader, and a professional, not only in this town, but actually across the country. With the Chiefs of Police Association, he has led our department to a number of awards and certifications, and voluntarily going through these tests. We have one of the best police departments in the Commonwealth, as I said before, if not in the country. So, particularly proud of the job he's done, and whoever follows him will have a tough act to follow. But also an easy job because of the legacy we'll have left behind in his leadership. He's hired great people, which is vital, managed the right folks along, given them the right training. So we have a well-trained, well-organized police department. I would expect, obviously similar or the same leadership characteristics, somebody who's publicly visible, professional, calm, a good communicator, and somebody that the police force values and follows and wants to serve for. I mean, that's vital in any leader, is the people need to want to do right by you. I think that's something that Chief Smith does with the department, and that's a leadership characteristic I would expect in the next chief. So looking forward to that search. I think it'll be a long one and a hard one, but hopefully we can find somebody as good as Chief Smith.
Deb.
I mean, I think he's a visionary is another thing. I think that he's kind of constantly looking to see what's going on sort of culturally. And he's just really paying attention to what you said nationally. I mean, he's sort of constantly anticipating almost the next thing and what potentially could happen. And that can sound very naysayer or doomsday to some people. But I think he really is if trends is a word, he's just really watching trends. What characteristics, I mean, him. What would I want in another police chief? Him. He's been fantastic for the town and the people who have trained under him. And you see people progressing up too, which is what I love, is that he's promoting these people and people that you've sort of grown up with them. You saw them sort of, work in this one shift, and the next thing you know, they're in the highest office, so to speak. And I think he's been good to his people. I think he's been great to the town.
Paul?
I think that as we look into the future as far as what's going to happen in 3 years, we do have to look at how the chief himself has his leadership over his entire department is passed down one right after another, down to the lowest level. His deputy chief and his lieutenants are molding right after his qualities and will carry out the same responsibilities and virtues that he is instilling in them now. But the chief has set the bar high. He has made a name for Wakefield in many communities across the country. So I think we will find that it will be a hard choice to pick from the multiple candidates that could possibly be given the position of chief when that time comes.
Julie?
So I echo everything that everybody has said about Chief Smith and the amazing bench that he has built, and I think that that will make the process of looking for somebody all that much easier. Certainly I would want to look for somebody who is community-minded, kind of minority populations as well as majority populations, and just like you see Chief Smith everywhere, saw him in Malden at a transgender workshop, saw his lieutenants at the International Women's Day. I'm really impressed. They're out everywhere, and I think we need somebody like that. We need somebody who doesn't wait for people to come to the police station, who goes out in the community and knows the people in the community, somebody who's a good communicator, and just somebody who's overall engaged and knows this community. Those would be the qualities that I look for.
Tom, your question is for Deb Butler.
Yes, Deb. Do you support the efforts to build a community hockey rink in Wakefield? What are the benefits and are the drawbacks to moving forward with a new rink?
Emphatically, yes. Actually, I think I think it's a spectacular idea. I like the way they're thinking about it, the positioning of it. I like the access road. They're thinking about the traffic impact, and I like it because it's a community gathering place. I mean, any time that you can sort of stay local and have that hometown experience. And then it's also just great. I mean, everyone's looking for ice time, so it's to have it managed professionally. I mean, we're essentially leasing the land, so to know that someone's going to know how to handle it. So potentially two beautiful ices. It's gonna bring people to the town if it's done well and done right, and we're looking like a Marlboro. It's just a great opportunity for us. For a lot of reasons. It's great for the high school, it's great for varsity teams, it's practice times, figure skaters, free skates for just families. I think it's a huge win for us.
Paul?
I fully support the new rink concept. I think this is going to be a great opportunity for Wakefield to utilize a piece of property and have it so that not only the Wakefield schools, but the vocational school will have use to it, and it's not going to cost the town any money, because what we're planning on doing is having someone build the property, build the rink on our property, and then lease it back to us, and then we would be able to get skating time on it, where now we have to go to other communities in order to practice, or even have our home games in other communities. So I think it becomes a benefit to the town. Having the dual access, as what was mentioned, one up Hemlock and the other one off to Farm Street, that will be a great benefit too, because that will alleviate the traffic that will be generated in the area. It's out of the way, it's in a great location, it's long overdue, and I think that is a great, I do support it.
Julie?
I support it as well. I think it's an amazing example of a public-private partnership. Having said that, I think that it's important that the Board of Selectmen and the other committees really stay involved and make sure that it is the kind of facility in terms of quality and activity that we need here in town. I don't think we just rent it out and kind of walk away, and I don't think that that would happen. But I think it's going to bring amazing activity to that area. There's already so much happening up there. You can't get a parking place to go into Breakheart. You have kids on both of those new fields, whether it's for organized sports or just recreation. So I think that whole area could really develop as another kind of cornerstone area of Wakefield. And I think the secondary access I'm excited about as well, because that intersection scares me with a brand new driver in the house.
Brian.
Yeah, sure. I think this is, before it's about ice time and things like that, it's really about, and I heard it echoed here, is community. This becomes a place for our children and even our adults to go in the community, another gathering place. And there's no better use of land and resources and investment of our time and effort than to build places for us to foster the community that is Wakefield, and a place for our people to congregate. So I think that's huge. As you mentioned, public-private partnership. This is a best practice in modern day governance as public-private. So we will take public land, lease it to a private entity who will pay all of the development funds and pay for the development, so there's no burden on us. And then we get discounts on ice time and actually end up saving our school budget operationally every year. There's an OpEx saving, so it benefits the school. It keeps our kids from having to drive other towns, keeps them here where we want them, we can have an eye on them, and again, keep them in our community and help build the bonds and the strength that make Wakefield so wonderful.
Okay, this is going to be our last question. Everybody gets 1 minute on this one. Mark, your question to Paul Donaco.
The Bylaw Review Committee is proposing that the town adopt a state statute that would allow members of boards and committees to attend meetings remotely using electronic devices. Should the selectmen adopt this measure?
We haven't had a full discussion on it yet as far as the practicality of it. I'm not sure how that will work. I mean, I've been in some meetings personally myself, and they've worked fine. In other meetings, we've lost calls, we've had drop calls, and then we had to wait on the meeting until we reestablished the contact. If it was designed in a way that it was sure and not disruptive, I think it could work. I just need a little bit more information about it at this point in time to give a solid yes or no. So I'm going to leave it as, it's still up in the air in my opinion as to whether or not that one item is there because of my reaction or my experience with it. So undecided at this time.
Julie.
I being from the business world, this makes perfect sense to me. I think it's common practice throughout the business world as long as you have the technology. I think actually video conferences, I do probably 2/3 of my meetings these days as video conference. And as I understand the bylaw, it would not count towards the quorum, but it would allow people to still participate. And I think that allows us to attract the best people to committees who may be not able to participate in multi-day or multi-month hearings. So I think that given the right technical and kind of rules around it, nothing replaces face-to-face, but it's an option that allows us to govern with the best people.
Brian.
Yeah, I would agree. I have a similar experience. My entire workforce is remote. I work from my home. I'm either home or traveling. So many things in the world are done remotely via teleconference or video conference. With that said, it's important distinction in this bylaw in particular, which is it allows for it. It doesn't allow a member to demand it or command it. It's not required. It's should the chairman of a board or person of a board desire to allow it in a particular instance, they may, provided they have the right tools. And I think that flexibility is really important, particularly for those boards who are governed by statutes that say if a board member misses, one hearing, maybe in a succession of 20 hearings, the ZBA has this, you miss one or two, you can no longer vote, and then you run into quorum issues and voting majority issues and things like that. It can get really problematic if you don't have a way to accommodate this. So it's a very tactical, under the law, important tool for us to do our jobs in government. But then also, again, it's kind of keeping up with the Joneses here in modern times. So many things are done that way. The world is so mobile. And I like your point, attracting the best people. If you can't make all the meetings, you still get to have the best people there. So I think it's, I support it. And again, it's not mandatory. It's something that's a new tool for us to help govern better.
Deb?
I agree as well. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think it's good access for people. I think, we respect people enough to know they're not abusing power. They're not dialing it in when they could show up. They're going to use it the way professionals use it all over the world. I mean, it's a communication tool, and it's a good one. And it allows people to hear what's going on when otherwise they would have no information at all.
Okay, closing statements. 2 minutes. Try and keep it that. I'm sure you've all practiced. And we're going to start in the same order as we kick things off. Deb, you are first.
Sure. I am contentedly unpracticed, actually, at this. I do not have a prepared closing statement. I was interested to see how tonight would go. And I'm going to sort of respond in kind. It's not an opportunity for any kind of rebuttal, but I will say it is interesting with one of our questions touched on overdevelopment, and we all focused on the positive of mixed use, which is fantastic development, but I do think we always want to keep an eye on development in general, because not all development going on in Wakefield is mixed use. So, I'm running for Board of Selectmen. I'm super interested in listening. I'm super interested in anyone's vote. And I'm not going to make a passionate argument about why I'm the most qualified, because there are tons and tons of opportunities. Many people in this town have met me through many different works. I've been in your homes, I've been in your businesses, I've been on your radar, I've been on your Facebook, I've been volunteering on your committees. If you're interested in me, I will find you, you will find me. I'm definitely asking for your vote, but this is not the opportunity for you to, the only opportunity for you to hear from me. So I will remain active in this community, and I'll be looking for you in person.
Paul.
Thank you. I want to say that I have been a constant advocate for the citizens of this community, as well as for the type of development that goes on for a long time as it stands right now. Over the years, I have worked hard to make sure that the citizens consistently are heard in seeking better ways to accomplish the goals to fulfill this wonderful community for which we live. As a selectman, it is my position to listen to the needs of the people who reside here, as well as the people that work here. Knowing that these needs can also change, you have to be committed to doing the best job that you can for the town. As your selectman, I promise to always listen, to be open, and hear all sides of any issues. My experiences over the years has afforded me the ability to make decisions that have attributed to the growth and expansions that we see and enjoy today. We need to continue working on the challenges facing the town, though. Finances, infrastructure, new growth, economic development, and supporting the business community in trying to address their needs to the best of our abilities. I may have experience and knowledge gained from serving the town as an elected official, but it doesn't mean that I am not open to new ideas. I consider myself a hardworking individual, led by my commitment, dedication, availability to all, and a person to the position I now serve. These are my issues I have worked throughout my entire term on my board, and I will bring that to the board if and when I am elected on April 24th. So thank you, and that's it.
Julie.
Great. So I hope tonight I've conveyed my visions and my ideas and my skills. I thought I would take this opportunity to just tell you why, as a newcomer, I think that I'm ready for this position. Right out of college, I went into Peace Corps in the Dominican Republic, and it really informed me about how everybody's the same, but people have different resources and people have different opportunities, and it really emboldened me to make sure that whatever I do in life, I really try to take those differences and understanding with me. I stayed there 4 years, living along the Dominican-Haitian border, and came back and started my career in renewable energy because I'd lived in an unelectrified area of that country. And started working on solar energy projects and realized that when we turn on the lights in the United States, we take that for granted, but there's a lot behind it. And so I really want to bring kind of that passion for service, that passion for the energy and the environment. I worked for some large companies for about 15 years, worked my way up to the top in charge of investor relations and communications for a company that had assets in 3 continents. But I was restructured out of that job, and I had to pivot again. So I started my own small business, and have really enjoyed it. And I'm now helping startup energy companies do strategic communications. And so while I was doing that, it's giving me flexibility to get more involved in the community. And I really feel like I'm at a time and a place in my life, and I have the skills to offer. And I would like everybody to consider voting for me on April 24th. Do I have time for one story?
Sure.
How much time do I have? Okay.
No, you got time.
So when I think about why I'm running too, it comes down to a community that's livable, and a community that's sustainable, and a community that's inclusive for all people. And the story I like to tell is just a few weeks ago, I was walking, doing some business on Albion Street, and I walked out, and there was a senior Italian woman who was pushing a cart full of groceries. And she saw me coming. She said, "Honey, can you help me put it up on the curb?" And so I helped her, and it was heavy, move it up on the curb. And I said, "Can I walk it to your car?" And she said, "Oh, no, I don't have a car." And I thought, this really encompasses everything that I believe in and everything that I'm running on. Because here's a woman who shopping locally, walking to her home, and able to stay in Wakefield. And that's what I want for everyone.
Thank you. Brian.
Hey, just before I start my close, first of all, I want to thank my fellow candidates here for joining us tonight. Thank you, Bill Carroll, for moderating, and David Watts for hosting the whole event, and Mark Sardella and Mr. Stapleton for standing in. So thank you all very much. I also think would be remiss to just not remember the fact that Phyllis Hull took out papers to run for a seat on the Board of Selectmen, and she's not here tonight, but what an inspiration she is to all of us. I hope I can be half as passionate or energetic when I'm her age, if I make it. So we miss Phyllis, and she was a great person in our town. So hey, let me jump to my closing statement. Rather than talk about my qualifications, I think what I really want to talk about is kind of where Wakefield is. And it's really a story of progress. So when I joined the Board of Selectmen in 2012, we were still in the process of a recovery. We were still under recovering from a recession nationwide and lots of decades of neglect of our own infrastructure, our buildings, our water mains, our roads, and things like that. We were underfunding important things like OPEB, other post-employment benefits. And so in that time, we adopted financial controls and have really turned the town around. And we've made a ton of progress in that regard. It was mentioned tonight, we have one of the highest bond ratings in the state, a AAA bond rating, and Wakefield is now poised to do great things. So I really feel like we have, in the last 6 years, righted the ship. Not me alone, of course, the Board of Selectmen, all the departments in the town, but we have righted this ship, and it is now time to take it for a sail. And I want to go along for that. I think we've done a lot of work laying the groundwork. I want to be on that. There are a lot of things we can do. And what I look at this job, I think this is public service. We are volunteers, but if we're servants, who do we serve? And for me, I just jump right to the tax rolls. We have two forms of constituents, residential taxes and commercial taxes. These are our two bases. And so for the people of the town, the residents, I really look at quality of life and what are the things we can do for the entire term of somebody's life, whether it's investing in education, not just the buildings, but the teachers and the facilities, and making sure we have the best for our young children, whether it's building something like the hockey rink as kids get older, what we've done with AmeriCal or the rec department or the Boys and Girls Club. Perhaps it's as people get older and young professionals are in town, things like the rail trail or the rail trail, or sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But there's a lot of things we can do for the people of our town from a quality of life standpoint, and then also an equality of life standpoint. We need to take care of everybody in our town and make sure this is welcoming and inclusive and open place for everybody who wants to live here. That's what I look forward to doing, and I really hope you vote for me on April 24th. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the candidates for participating tonight and for their public service. Mark Sardella, as usual, and Tom for pitch hitting here with the questions. And I'd like to thank WCAT. They always do a professional job. This is a great place, and this is a forum that I don't know how many other towns have in order to educate yourself. The key thing is April 24th, get out and vote. Vote yourself, drag your friends, drag your relatives. It's important to participate, and there's some decisions to be made about the kind of candidates you want. Thank you again, and good night.